to the Mystical Dream Studio.
Hello everyone! Welcome back to the Mystical Dream Studio. I once again am your host, Madman McQueen. My wife was going to make some alligator stew, but it turns out the crock pot was broken. So I'm just going over some old family photos. Memories. I guess it's true what they say. Insanity runs in my family. And it runs with scissors. I'm suddenly reminded of all the things my father used to say to me. He'd tell me, son, you're not completely useless. You can always serve as a bad example. And my sister, she's not the brightest person in the world. She still thinks that USB is the backup plan in case USA fails. And my grandmother, now she was tough. She buried 3 husbands. Of course, only 2 of them were dead. Family. You never know what you're going to get, and you're stuck with the one you have. Better or worse. Just like the young man in the story I'm about to tell you. But first, are you hungry? Feeling like a little something different? Then check out today's sponsor.
Tired of the same old meals day after day? Then join us at the world-famous Goblin restaurant located in enchanting Spellshire, England. Enjoy old-world comfort food dishes like peasant underclass, snake tartar, cream of feet, French bunion soup, spaghetti, macaroni and fleas and cheeseburgers, just like Mummy used to make. Bring the whole family, and make your reservation now.
Yes, folks, the Goblin. Mention my name or the promo code down below and get yourself a free order of maggots and baguettes. They're scrumptious. And now on with today's story. And now, on with the story. The Hanged Woman by William J.M. McQueen. School was over for the year, and the first day of summer had finally arrived. Overjoyed, young David Ebsen went out to play. The first thing David did was get up early, and he went out to do some fishing at the large pond at the back end of his family's property. He liked it at the pond. It had everything a 12-year-old boy could possibly want. Water, frogs, fish, sunshine, and plenty of privacy. Dragonflies danced from cattail to cattail, and yellow jackets buzzed around the sodden banks. David sat on a rather large boulder that extended into the basin. The line from his fishing pole dangled into the water and caused ripples along the surface. David brushed the light brown hair from his eyes and settled in to wait for a catch. It was so peaceful in that part of the property. No loud noises, no cars, no loud music, just tranquil quiet. David's dad referred to sitting in silence like that as listening to the sound of the world turning. Several birds sang cheerfully, and a couple of squirrels played nearby. It all seemed so perfect. It almost made David forget what a mess his young life had become. David was leading a double life, and it had been taking its toll on him. His mother, June, was a highly religious woman in a fanatical sort of way. She believed that God, several angels, and countless saints spoke with her on a daily basis. She also believed that God had chosen their family to fight some religious crusade, and she fiercely guided the lives of her husband and children according to God's plan. David had difficulty believing any of it because nothing his mom said would happen ever happened. He did not know exactly what was going on, but he was fairly certain God was not speaking to her. It was all in her head, but that did not stop her from trying to control his life. He wanted to become a veterinarian when he got older, but his mom would have none of it. She wanted him to become a priest. It was God's will, she told him. He was to become a priest, and his big sister Brenda was to become a nun. Any other profession would be a slap to the face of God, and the devil would seize their souls. David tried reasoning with his mother, but her absolute faith was unyielding. That was when he decided to manipulate the situation to his advantage. He discovered that he could keep his mother out of his hair if he simply told her everything she wanted to hear, which meant telling her that he wanted to become a priest. The deception meant that he could secretly live his real life behind her back without her controlling influence. It also meant that he could not drop his guard for a second, or his mother would, sometimes violently, attempt to yank his soul from the devil's clutches and steer him back onto the glorious pathway to God. His schoolwork had suffered, and his friends didn't come around anymore. They were too afraid of his crazy mom. Brenda went in a different direction. She sought her mother's approval and took to tattling on him whenever she got the chance. That broke his heart, and her actions alienated him from his own sister. But it taught him a valuable lesson about trusting no one, not even family. He learned to keep Brenda at a safe distance, as far from himself and his real life as possible. His dad, Pete, was nice enough. He was fun-loving and a good provider, and he worked really hard as a welder for the gas company. Pete was beginning to have difficulty with his eyes, an occupational hazard, David was told, and David felt sorry for him. Pete was a large and powerful man, and as tough as they come, but he never stood up to Mom. He never defended his kids, never stuck by them or protected them from Mom's controlling influence. David figured his dad was scared of her, and he was glad whenever her psychosis was not directed his way. Since Pete offered no support, David had to continue with his life of secrets and lies for self-preservation, and he was tired of it. David saw the dark shapes of fish swimming beneath the surface of the water near his line, and he thought he would get a nibble, but apparently the fish were not interested. David didn't mind. He was outdoors and away from his family. Life was good for the moment. He remembered seeing a bumper sticker that read, "The worst day fishing is still better than the best day working," and he agreed with it entirely. In David's case, working was replaced with school and family. He loved his family. He just had to keep his distance from them to protect his own sanity. He knew he was screwed up inside, but he didn't know what else to do. He was trapped in that life without hope of escape. It seemed pointless to resist, but he rigorously attempted to do so, and these few times of quiet solitude were his only retreat. A few clouds passed lazily across the sun and cast the land in shadow. Then the clouds simply moved along and the sun shined down once again. This process happened periodically throughout the morning, and David didn't notice it at first, but something was quite wrong that day. Every time a cloud passed over the sun, the pond appeared to change in subtle ways. The animals and birds began to flee from the large overgrown area at the far end, and David felt a chill when he looked in that direction. The trees, shrubs, and overgrown plants seemed to transform into a region both creepy and dangerous, only to return to normal once the sun shone down again. David was intrigued and frightened by what he saw, and convinced himself that his eyes were playing tricks on him. But when another cloud passed across the sun, and the area transformed right before his eyes, he knew he was not imagining it. Against his better judgment, David put down his fishing pole, left the boulder, and cautiously walked the muddy banks toward the sinister-looking cluster of growth. He approached the place. A mist began to cover the ground, near what appeared to be a natural opening in the foliage, a pathway of sorts. He also noticed an unsettling number of eyes glowing from within the thick shadows. An unusual animal with long, powerful legs, a diminutive tail, reddish-brown fur, long ears, and frightening-looking antlers stepped out of the shadows. The animal could have been some sort of disturbingly creepy deer, and it slowly walked out of the overgrowth and stared at him with its glowing yellow eyes. The creature did not seem threatening, but looked as if it was studying him. The animal turned around and strolled back along the pathway into the growth, stopped to briefly look back at David, then casually continued along the natural path. David could not be certain, but he had a feeling that the beast wanted him to follow it. Every instinct told him to run and flee. Instead, he found himself following the animal that walked deeper into the tree-lined overgrowth. The weed-blanketed path remained relatively obstacle-free, and the mist turned into a thick fog. Heavy, gnarled, thorn-covered plants lined the trail, and David cut his left arm on a sharp thorn. The cut was not bad, but it began to bleed, and David held his injured arm protectively. Spiders and scorpions scurried out of his way as he walked, and he discovered that he had lost track of the deer-like animal. The fog became so thick at one point that he could barely see anything, but then it all began to clear. David's heart was pounding in his chest, and he was extremely frightened. His brain was screaming for him to turn around and go home, but his curiosity won out. He had gone that far, he may as well see what was ahead. A few nasty spiders crawled up his legs and were nearly to his waist. Startled, he quickly brushed them off and, in a panic, ran ahead as fast as he could. When he hoped he had put enough distance between himself and the creepy crawlies, he allowed himself to slow down and stop. He was sweating and breathing quite hard, and the view that met his eyes did nothing to settle his nerves. The fog had cleared except for a light mist hovering above the ground, and he came to realize that this was not the world he knew. Dark storm clouds rumbled overhead, and the world looked dead for as far as his eyes could see. Dead trees and plants covered the surreal landscape, and David found himself wandering deeper and deeper, yielding to his curiosity. Vicious-looking beetles scurried away as blackbirds sat in the bare tree limbs and watched him closely. Their shrill cries echoed across the land. David's mind was reeling. What was this place? And how come he had never seen it before? And what was wrong with the sky? A few minutes ago it was blue and sunny. Now it was dark clouds and lightning. Could this place be another world? Another reality beyond his own? It had to be, because he had walked around that pond countless times since he was a kid, and none of this was here before. Somehow the clouds over the sun created a doorway, and David was mentally kicking himself for stepping through it. Black flies were attracted to the sticky blood on his cut arm, and he had to shoo them away. As David cautiously walked around the craggy hills, he spotted something in the distance that made him freeze in his tracks. Amidst a cluster of old, gnarled trees, a dark object was dangling above ground, tethered to an outstretched limb. He stared at it from a distance and hoped it was not what he thought it was. Slowly, he walked closer to the long, thin object, and the nearer he came, it became very clear what it was: a dead body hanged by the neck. David began to shiver from the damp chill, and he stepped closer to the dangling body. From the tattered outfit, he guessed it was a woman. Several birds were perched nearby. From the amount of decomposition, she had obviously been hanging there for a long time. The birds had pecked out her eyes and torn her flesh, leaving her a little more than a skeleton with long matted hair. David stared at what was left of her face. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and he wondered who she was and how she came to hang in that tree. Was it suicide, or did someone kill her? A lot of questions flooded his mind, and the more he thought about it, the more he began to feel sorry for her, whoever she was. Then the woman's head unexpectedly snapped up and turned to look at David. He let out a frightened yell as the woman looked at him with her eyeless, dead face. She reached up with her bony arms and hands and uselessly clawed at the rope gripping her neck. In sheer panic, David turned and began to run away, but the woman's mouth opened and these awful sounds came out as though she was unexpected to language. And then finally she found her voice and yelled out in a hollow-sounding voice, "Stop right there, boy!" David stopped running. He was not entirely sure why. He slowly turned to face the dead woman who was still watching him. "Come here," she commanded. David's mind was telling him to keep running, but he was walking back to her instead. Fear was a strange thing. On one hand, it led you to safety by making you run away from danger, but on the other hand, it made you susceptible to the commands of an overwhelming power when trapped. David certainly felt trapped at that moment. David's mind was numb with terror, and he was unable to think clearly. The woman stretched out what was left of her arm and pointed to a spot in front of her. "Stand there." David obediently stood where he was told. The woman's head stayed fixed upon him while the rest of her body dangled and twisted in the wind. "What's your name, boy?" David tried to speak, but nothing came out. He cleared his throat and tried again. David. "Hello, David. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you." David just stood there, too frightened to say anything. The woman took her bony fingers and attempted to smooth her tangled, matted hair. "Goodness, just look at me," she said with sadness in her voice. "I must look a fright." She looked at David again. "You're probably wondering what's going on, aren't you?" David nodded nervously. "Well, David, that is a long and sad story, and I'm still waiting for the happy ending." David just stood there, frightened. "Will you help me, David? I need your help desperately. I've been cursed and fated to hang in this tree forever. If you cut me down, the curse will be broken and I'll be free." David just stood there. He appeared to be in shock. "Will you help me, David?" David stood there, shivering. "David?" David blinked a few times. "What?" The woman pointed to the rope holding her there. "Will you cut me down, please?" David's mind started to clear a bit, and he shook the fog from his brain. What? Will you please cut me down from this tree?" He looked at the dead woman's face with its ghastly, grimacing skull. He took a few steps forward, and she became happy. "That's it. Good boy." But then he stopped. He did not know anything about this woman. Maybe she was there for a good reason, and terrible things would happen if she were free. Maybe she was telling him the truth. He simply had no way of knowing for sure. "What's wrong?" she asked with concern. "Why are you stopping?" David took a few steps backward. I don't know. I mean, is it the right thing to do? I don't know who you are." The dead woman tilted her head thoughtfully as she stared at the boy. "Does it matter who I am?" "Well, yeah, it kinda does. How do I know you're not some evil witch out to destroy the world or something?" The dead woman sighed. "I'm not. You just have to trust me." "If you're not, then why are you here?" "My name is, or was, Clarina," the woman told him, "and I was hunting an evil wizard who stole my little sister. I thought I had him trapped and was about to kill him when things went terribly wrong. It turned out I was the one trapped, and he punished me by leaving me here, to hang by my neck for all eternity." "There's no such thing as wizards," David countered. "Not real ones, anyway." "Maybe not in your world," Clarina told him, "but where I come from, they're everywhere. My world is filled with magic." David still was not sure. This was all too much for him to process, and all he wanted to do was run away, far away. She may have been telling him the truth. He just didn't know. How could he know? A short while ago, he was fishing in the sunshine where his biggest concern was his family. This was more than he could handle. Evil wizards, dead women, curses. What was the right thing to do? The whole world could be in danger if he cut her down. David backed away some more. "I'm sorry." "David?" Clarina became alarmed. He backed away along the path he took to get there. "I'm sorry, I just don't know what to do." Clarina reached out to him with her bony arms. "Don't go, David. Please, don't go." He turned and ran back toward home. "I'm sorry." "Please," Clarina called out. "I'm begging you," desperation in her voice. David ran as fast as he could. "I'm sorry," is all he kept saying. Clarina's angry voice carried on the wind and boomed across the dead land. "Damn you, boy! If you leave me here, I curse you too. Return to your home. Pain and suffering will befall you and all those you love. Darkness will shadow you all the days of your life. If I can't know peace, then neither shall you." Those words sent chills through David as he ran, trying to navigate the surreal landscape back to the pond and safety. "Run, boy, run!" Those words echoed through the stormy sky, and he did just that. He ran and ran.
Run, boy, run!
Thank you, folks, for joining me today. Remember, stay tuned for the exciting continuation of The Hanged Woman. I don't want you to miss what happens next because it's going to be pretty exciting. Meanwhile, please comment below. I would love to hear what you have to say. I do value your opinions, you know. Hit that little notification bell and like this video. The algorithms of YouTube really like it when you do that. It helps my channel and helps me provide you with wonderful quality entertainment. This is your humble host, Madman McQueen, wishing you all farewell. And remember, do as you imagine, and the stars shall light the way for your dreams. Good night.